on a second chance for disqualified drivers. My name is Kerry Wright and I work in the community legal education. Okay, so welcome to this Legal Aid New South Wales Law webinar on a second chance for disqualified drivers. My name is Kerry Wright and I work in the community legal education team at Legal Aid New South Wales. I'm here today with Vicky and Mel from Transport for New South Wales and Liz from LawAccess New South Wales. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Hi. To begin, I want to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians on whose land we're broadcasting from today, and to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining the webinar today or viewing the recording. You may have attended our webinar on this topic in 2018, or watched the webinar recording or listened to the podcast episode. There have been some changes to the supports available through Legal Aid New South Wales, and we're aware that there are at least 4,000 people still eligible who haven't applied to date, and more become eligible each day as they achieve the offence-free period required by the reforms. So the purpose of this webinar is to remind you about the driver disqualification reforms that have been in place since October 2017, particularly the process for finding out if you're eligible to apply for a new licence. The information today is general legal information only. It's not legal advice, but we'll tell you where you can send your clients for free legal help. So moving on. So this slide that's coming up gives you an outline of what we're going to cover today. So just to remind you that you can still apply to have your driver disqualification removed, how Transport for New South Wales can help, how LawAccess New South Wales can help, and we'll also talk about dealing with unpaid fines. And we're going to start with a very quick poll to find out on average, how many people do you see who have a driver disqualification? A lot, a few, none, but I'm still interested in hearing more about it, or you're not sure, you don't ask this question. So for our panelists, people are voting. So I'm just wait till we've got a good number of people who have voted, and then I'll share the results with you. Okay, so I'll close that poll and share the results. They're coming up now. So you can see 50% have said a few, 29% have said a lot. So that's good for our audience. 14% none, but they're still interested, and 7% not sure, I don't ask my clients about this. So maybe after this webinar, the participants might think about asking their clients about whether they have driver disqualifications. So we'll move on. So this slide up here is showing you what it's called. It's the Driver Disqualification Reform Scheme. And the reform started in 2017. And the Driver Disqualification Removal Scheme is one of the reforms. Some of you might have heard about the Habitual Traffic Offender Scheme. Well, that scheme was abolished under these reforms. And the reform measures focused on getting tougher on dangerous drivers and repeat traffic offenders. The Driver Disqualification Removal Scheme is trying to help people who've been doing the right thing to get back on the road, because we know the hardship of not having a driver's licence, particularly if people live in rural or remote areas. At the start of the scheme, Legal Aid New South Wales had funding for lawyers to assist people to submit their applications. This funding has now finished, and Legal Aid New South Wales lawyers or private lawyers doing legal aid work are no longer able to assist with applications or representing people at court. However, Transport for New South Wales, LawAccess New South Wales, some community legal centres and the Aboriginal Legal Service can still assist people with the process involved and may be able to help represent your clients in court, particularly the Aboriginal Legal Service for Aboriginal clients. It's more likely, however, that your client will have to represent themselves in court, and this will involve answering questions from the magistrate and maybe handing up some additional documents your client may have to demonstrate their change in driving behaviour, training undertaken like a safe traffic offenders program, and their personal circumstances, which Liz will talk a little bit about those documents later on. So that's why we wanted to revisit this topic and encourage community and support workers to ask their clients if they have a licence disqualification and support them to put in an application to see if they're eligible to have these quashed. In terms of going through that process, there are two questions which are up on the screen now. The first question is, have you ever committed a very serious driving offence? And you can see on the screen the relevant section in the Road Transport Act 221A, which has the definitions of never eligible offences. And Vicky and Mel will also talk a little bit about that. So these are offences like driving a motor vehicle that causes death or grievous bodily harm to a person, predatory driving or police pursuit, or intentional menacing driving. So if they answered yes to this question, then they won't be able to apply under these reforms if they've been convicted of a very serious driving offence. And the other question is, have you been free of any driving offences for at least 2 or 4 years? And again, the definition of that is under section 221A of the Road Transport Act. So the offence-free period varies depending on the type of offence that led to your disqualification in the first place. So it's always best to submit the application, which Vicky and Mel currently process, and they'll be able to tell you whether you're eligible or not. So that takes us on to the next part of our presentation. Am I eligible? What we'll do now is we'll hear from Mel and Vicky from Transport New South Wales to find out about that process. So I'd like to introduce the pro team, Mel and Vicky, and invite them to discuss the following topics on the application process: how the processing of customer applications, customer letters and certified driving record, preparing court reports and driving records. And Mel, you're going to take us through the next couple of slides.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry. Hi, my name's Mel, and I'll be discussing the Transport for New South Wales application process. As a part of the application process, Transport for New South Wales also clarifies law part codes on a driving record against the legislation to calculate a customer's eligibility status. Please note, a customer's eligibility cannot be determined without completing the application process.
Thank you. And this slide's coming up.
And here is a basic process summary for eligible customers. A customer will need to ensure they complete the form Driving Record Application for Disqualification Removal Order. The customer does not need to purchase or obtain a driving record any other way. It is provided to them with the response to their application. The customer must then make an application to a New South Wales local court for the disqualification removal order with the letter and the driving record provided from Transport for New South Wales. And if the customer's application is granted at the local court, the customer can then attend a Service New South Wales to make application for a driver licence.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and this is an example of the documents provided to an eligible customer, and these are the documents that are required to make application to the local court. The customer will be provided with a letter and a driving record, a certified driving record.
Okay, thank you.
Customers who are not eligible or never eligible will also receive a letter and a certified driving record. This information provided for a not eligible customer will detail advice of when the customer may become eligible under the rules to apply. It will also point out to the customer that this does not affect any rights to make application to a local court regarding the quashing of a habitual traffic offender declaration. As some provisions in the legislation are open to interpretation, Transport for New South Wales also refers customers to seek legal advice before proceeding with an application to a local court. The information provided in a never eligible customer letter will identify the never eligible offence in the letter. It will also provide information regarding habitual traffic offender quashing and seeking further legal advice before making an application to a local court.
Okay, thanks very much, Mel. So Vicky, you're going to take us through the next few slides.
Yes, hi, my name's Vicky. I'm going to cover some of the observations made by the project team since the disqualification reform legislation commenced. So incomplete applications are common, which can delay the time in processing. A completed application includes page 1, page 2, and certified proof of identity documents. If you're experiencing difficulties in providing proof of identity documents for the application process, please contact the disqualification reform team. The waiting times for processing applications can vary depending on the volume received and the interstate information requests. Some interstate authority requests for information can take up to 14 days to be returned back to us. So also ensure the customer signs the application declaration on page 1 and selects how they would like to receive their response, either by mail or email.
Okay, so it's answered one of our questions, Vicky.
Oh, great.
So
Okay, so customers are continually meeting the eligibility criteria as a result of the requirement to be 2-year offence-free in regard to minor offences and 4-year offence-free for major offences. So we continue to see both new and repeat applicants become eligible as their offence-free periods progress, which is why we're continuing to receive a higher than expected volume of applications. So Transport for New South Wales have also implemented strategies during the final phase of the work group project team to contact potentially eligible customers, and we will continue to do so until the end of June 2021. Also during 2020 COVID-19 lockdown, that also identified more customers looking to return to lawful driving to avoid public transport. Many applicants that may never be eligible or not currently eligible for disqualification removal order have made application to the court to have their habitual offender declarations quashed. In some cases, these are the only disqualifications on a person's driving record, which means they can remove the disqualification via this process. In other cases, it may not remove the whole disqualification period, but can reduce it significantly. And in order to apply to have the habitual offender declarations quashed, the customer will need to obtain their habitual offender declaration letter via Service New South Wales and make application to the local court to do so.
okay. Thanks, Vicky. Can I just clarify that people can still put in applications after June?
Yes, they can. It's just that the project team will no longer be solely responsible for the applications coming through.
Yeah, we have dedicated resources at the moment, and they'll be able to make sure that we've captured everyone in that time frame. But from there, Transport for New South Wales will review how many are still becoming eligible and what resources we can allocate to that.
Great, thank you. Okay,
So,
next slide, Vicky.
In regard to court representation for disqualification removal order, Transport for New South Wales do not have a representative attend court hearings. We do, however, provide a report to the local court with respect to the driving record to the applicant, of the applicant prior to the hearing, referencing 221C3 of the Road Transport Act 2013.
Great.
So this is an example of some of the customer impact feedback we have received. So we've received really positive information. So, just some examples of that, people saying, I've struggled to get a job without a license living in a remote area. They've had to rely on other people to drive them around. So with a second chance for them to get their license back, they can get their independence back, which has been fantastic. In regards to some family situations, we've had people admit to being a hothead when they were young and first got their license. They couldn't ever help out with transporting the family around or the children, but now they're older, they're able to help with their grandkids. And for medical situations, mum and dad are both really sick and have had to use public transport to get to medical appointments. So if I can get my license back, I can help take them to their medical appointments. So that's just some examples of some of the feedback we have received, which has been fantastic. So the disqualification reform project has had a major effect on some customers' lives, which has provided them with a pathway back to lawful driving, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's great that you get that feedback.
Yeah. So, on this slide you can see the contact details for the Transport for New South Wales project team, which is Mel and myself. So our email address, disqualification removal orders at transport.newsouthwales.gov.au, or that phone number. So, for any inquiries, you can contact us via those methods.
That's great. Thanks, Mel and Vicky, for your presentation. So now we're going to move forward to talk a little bit about where you can find the resources they've just talked about, and also chat to Liz about LawAccess New South Wales and how they can help. So this is the link on the screen now as to where you can download the application form that they spoke about and what it looks like. And that link will also be in the email that follows the webinar. And as they said, the next step is you make an application to go to the local court if you get one of those eligible letters and a copy of the certified driving record, and to seek a disqualification removal order. And so this next slide coming up shows you the link to where to find that form and what that form looks like. But Liz will also talk about give an example of filling out that form, because there's an example on the LawAccess New South Wales website. So just to stress on this slide, can I get help at court? As I mentioned, Legal Aid New South Wales can no longer help people in court with these applications, so your client will need to represent themselves at court, but LawAccess New South Wales can speak to your client about the court process, and you may be able to get help from your local community legal centre or Aboriginal legal service. So it's worth giving them a call to see if they can help. So now I want to introduce Liz from LawAccess New South Wales. And Liz, do you want to go through what you're going to cover?
Sure, thanks, Kerry. Hi, my name is Liz, and today I'll be taking you through some of the ways that LawAccess can help people applying to remove a driver disqualification. So we're going to look at the LawAccess New South Wales resources. What happens if someone calls LawAccess New South Wales? How can LawAccess New South Wales help before court? We'll look at a case study and a journey. So I'll take you first to the resources. On our website. Thanks, Kerry. On our website, the Representing Yourself section has the following resources: losing your license, applying to remove your driver license disqualification, a step-by-step guide, instructions for filling out an application, a sample completed application form, instructions for writing a character reference, and your submissions. So I'll take you now to the page on losing your license. This page contains information for people who've lost their licence at court, and it covers the following subtopics: licence disqualification, the alcohol interlock program, going to prison and your licence, applying to remove your driver licence disqualifications, getting your habitual traffic offender declaration quashed. And if we go to the next slide, you can see we've provided some information on applying to remove your driver licence disqualification. We also have a step-by-step guide, which is 10 steps you can see in the guide to applying to have your driver disqualification removed. So this takes the user through step 1, which is to get a copy of your driving record. Step 2, to consider seeking legal advice. And if we go through the slides, you can see, Kerry, thank you, Kerry, the different steps that are outlined there with the information about what to do. If we go to step 3, getting the local court form. Step 4, filling out that form. Step 5, filing the form. Step 6, preparing your documents. Step 7, attending court. Step 8, presenting your case. Step 9, the decision. And then step 10, what happens after the hearing. We also have instructions for how to fill out the court application. So this is a document which has instructions on what to write in the different sections of the application in blue to help customers filling out that form themselves. We also have a sample application form that has been completed to give customers an idea of what the form might look like when it's completed. We also, oh, sorry, Kerry.
Oh, I was just saying we've circled that last bit on the form, just that people understand that in the event their application is successful, they then have to go to Service New South Wales and apply for a licence, but they also need to deal with any outstanding fines debt, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well later on.
That's right.
Okay.
We also have instructions for writing a character reference for a person who's going to court, and we also have a sample reference available. This website has information about what a character reference is, who can give one, how to prepare a character reference, what to include and what not to include in that reference. We also have information about what a person can say to court at court on the day. This is the page Your Submissions, and we have information about the things to cover when speaking to the court. The circumstances of the offence, personal history, your education, employment history, financial circumstances, evidence of good character, criminal and driving history, need for a licence, remorse, and the orders that you would like the court to make.
Okay. Oh, you've got all those. Okay. Great. So thanks, Liz, for explaining all those resources. So now do you want to take us through what happens if someone calls LawAccess New South Wales?
Sure. So if a customer calls LawAccess New South Wales, the phone will be answered by an information officer. They will identify the nature of the call, key legal issues, the urgency and the complexity of the matter. The legal officer can give plain language legal information sourced from useful websites, books, and internal tools, such as the representing yourself pages we just looked at. They can also provide assistance to customers with legal aid inquiries, including those related to grant applications. They can provide guidance regarding eligibility for further assistance from legal aid or a pro bono scheme, or they can refer a customer to a legal assistance service or other service in their area for advice or further assistance. In some cases, they can arrange for a LawAccess lawyer to call the customer back for legal advice over the phone.
And we'll talk about that scenario in our case study.
That's right. So when a customer calls LawAccess, in some circumstances they can get legal advice. Our information officers will arrange for a customer to speak with a legal officer if the customer is a LawAccess New South Wales high priority customer. The customer has a New South Wales legal matter. The matter is appropriate for telephone advice and there's no appropriate referrals available. We will refer customers to legal advice services where this is appropriate. This is to try and ensure the best outcome for customers and prevent the duplication of services.
Okay. So what about what help can LawAccess New South Wales give to people before they go to court?
So LawAccess New South Wales can help a customer when they lose their licence. We can help a customer to get their driving record letter. If a customer is not eligible, we can help them to understand what's next or other options that a customer might have. For example, removing a habitual offender declaration. Or if a customer is eligible, advise them on or help them to apply to court to remove their disqualification. We can also help them to prepare for court. But LawAccess New South Wales doesn't provide representation in court.
No, that's right. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at our case study. I'll bring up that slide and I'll read this out to you. So Peter has lost his licence as a result of several charges of drink driving and driving while disqualified. Currently, his last disqualification period will end in 2023. He hasn't driven or committed any other driving offences since July 2016. Peter lives in a town without much public transport and wants to get his licence back so he can get a job and see his children. So Liz, what can Peter do?
Sure, so I'll take you through. Peter can call LawAccess New South Wales and he speaks to an information officer, Sam. Sam reads him some information from the LawAccess website and provides him with some resources by email. Losing your licence, applying to remove your driver licence disqualification, step-by-step guide, instructions to fill out the court application, a sample court application, instructions for writing a character reference, and your submissions. Peter reads the information on the LawAccess website and he thinks he might be eligible to get his licence back early, but he isn't sure. He decides to email Transport New South Wales to get a copy of his record and a letter saying whether he is eligible or not. He fills in and sends the application form. Transport New South Wales send Peter his driving record and a letter stating he is eligible to apply to the court to have his disqualification period removed early.
Great. And then what happens?
So Peter does not understand some of the information and he calls back for some more help. He is referred to a lawyer, Mary, who provides him with some advice on his eligibility, how to file the application, and how to prepare for court and what will happen in court. Peter files his application with the court, he pays the filing fee and is given a court date. He puts the court date in his diary, follows the LawAccess guide on writing his submissions to the court, explaining his circumstances. Peter asks his pastor and a friend to write him a character reference. Peter also reads the information on the LawAccess website about how to prepare for court and what will happen, using the step-by-step guide. On the court date, Peter brings 3 copies of all his documents and has prepared what he is going to say. He waits for his turn and then presents his case to the magistrate.
And we can only hope that he gets his order.
That's right.
Okay, thanks very much, Liz. That's excellent, taking us through those resources and explaining the process if someone calls LawAccess New South Wales for help with their legal problems, and in particular, the scenario that we're talking about today. So this slide is just to remind people that when they put in their application, they'll get a court attendance notice to the local court, and to make sure you do go to court on that day and speak to the magistrate, hand up those documents like Liz was suggesting, and answer any questions that they may have. And what the law says, so under section 221B2 of the Road Transport Act, It requires the magistrate to consider a number of things when deciding if it's appropriate to make an order to lift the licence disqualification. So these are the sorts of things that they'll be looking at: the safety of the public, your driving record before and during the disqualification period, whether you're able to drive during the offence-free period, your conduct since the licence disqualification, and that's where your support letters will help, the nature of the offences that led to the disqualification, and any other relevant circumstances, including the impact on the disqualification on your capacity to carry out family or carer responsibilities, business, education, your health, financial circumstances, and whether there is other transport options where you live. And as Vicky told us earlier, all these things are really important when people make these applications to the court. So you can have a look at the Road Transport Act to see those requirements. So one of the other things that you need to do if you apply and you're successful to get an order to have your disqualification lifted is you'll have to deal with any unpaid fines, because unpaid fines can also mean that your licence is suspended. So that means suspension of driver's licence is an enforcement power of Revenue New South Wales, and until your fines are brought under management, the suspension will stay in place, even if the court has agreed that you can apply for your licence again. So there's a number of different options for dealing with unpaid fines. You can set up a payment plan with Revenue New South Wales that the client can afford. They can do a work and development order to help clear their fines if they're eligible, and depending on their personal and financial circumstances, they may also be eligible for a write-off. Now, this is an area that Legal Aid New South Wales can help with, so there is a team at Legal Aid New South Wales that helps people with fines and work and development orders, but the first step is to call LawAccess New South Wales and talk about fines, and they'll make a referral if needed. But the other option is you as a community worker can talk to Revenue New South Wales on behalf of your client if you're signed up as an advocate. So in terms of work and development orders, if you haven't heard about those before, that's a program that operates in New South Wales for eligible people to help them clear their fines. So the types of activities that they do with a work and development order sponsor organisation or health practitioner is volunteer work. They can do educational personal development courses. They can do counselling or case management, or they do treatment programs with medical, mental health or addiction issues. And they can pay off up to $1,000 a month off their fines debt. And it's just a matter of finding out if they're eligible and signing up with a work and development sponsor in their area. To be eligible, there's 6 criteria and they only have to meet one of those. So anyone who's under 18 is automatically eligible. People who are experiencing financial hardship, so people on a Centrelink benefit or Veterans Affairs benefits, homeless people, people with a mental illness or a medical condition, people with an intellectual disability or cognitive impairment, and people with a serious drug addiction. So if you want to find out more about work and development orders, again, call LawAccess New South Wales or go to the Legal Aid New South Wales website and do a search for work and development orders. Okay, so now you've got your eligibility letter and your certified driving record from Transport for New South Wales. You've been to court, you've got your court order, and you've dealt with your fines. So the next step is, as Mel pointed out earlier on, is you go to Service New South Wales, take all that paperwork with you, and they'll tell you how to apply for a new driver's licence. They'll let you know what tests you need to do and any costs involved. So that's the next step. So just in terms of people in custody, Mel, Vicky or Liz, well, first of all, you, Mel and Vicky, do you help people who are in custody with these applications?
Yes, we do. And if there is any problems with filling in the application form, you can always contact the Transport for New South Wales project team, and we'll do the best we can to see that they're given the documents required.
Okay, thank you. And what about LawAccess New South Wales, Liz? What have you got for people in custody on your website?
We've updated our website and we have some information now and some tips for people in custody applying to get that disqualification removed.
Okay, great. All right, and I understand the Legal Aid New South Wales Prisoners Legal Service Civil Law team can also talk to people about their driver disqualification. So that's just a matter of booking an appointment with them through the normal processes that prisoners follow, and they'll chat to them about the process and point them in the direction of the LawAccess New South Wales resources, and that they can speak to their support workers in the prison to get help with the application that is submitted to Vicky and Mel. Okay, so these are our key messages coming up from this webinar. The first thing we want to stress is to find out if your client is eligible, and you can help with that through getting the application form, downloading that, ensuring they fill it all out correctly, and submit it with the relevant documents. And just a reminder that as Mel and Vicky said, that submitting an incomplete application can hold up the process, so it's really important to get that right in the first instance, and chat to Vicky and Mel if you're not sure or you're having trouble getting some documents. The second point, that your client needs to sort out their fines before they can get their license, to get those fines under management, whether it's a payment plan or doing a work and development order or getting some help with a write-off application with the fine instead, if they'd be eligible for that. So there's plenty of options there as well. Talk to LawAccess New South Wales or Revenue New South Wales or Legal Aid Work and Development Order team. And the third thing is to know where and when to send people for legal help. And as Liz has pointed out, there's so many resources on the LawAccess New South Wales website. You can start there or just get them to call LawAccess and the staff will take people through that. And some new resources that are available on the LawAccess New South Wales website, which we want to bring to your attention, is Fine Fixer New South Wales. So you can, there's the web address there at the top of the slide, legalhelp.lawaccess.newsouthwales.gov.au. There's a number of different guided pathways that are relevant to this topic today is Fine Fixer, where people who get a fine can go through this guided pathway and it'll tell you what your options are for dealing with your fines. And the other one is the traffic offence guided pathway, and that's where people who get a traffic offence, who commit a traffic offence, can go through a number of different guided pathways, whether it's a penalty notice, licence suspension, or a court attendance notice, and that'll take people through their options. The driving traffic offence guided pathways doesn't deal with these driver disqualification reforms, but it may be helpful for people who may have other traffic offences that they want to know their options before perhaps seeking legal help. All right, so that's the end of our webinar. We don't seem to have any questions that I can see from people, but we did have a couple of questions. People have asked, can the presentation be printed out? I'll send a copy of the presentation with to people who are participating today. So people have asked if the offence-free period commences the date of conviction or the date of the offence. Is that something you, Vicky?
Yeah, it's the date of offence.
Okay, all right. Mostly people are asking about getting the slides. What's the cost for the court application? You'd have to have a look at the local court website about that because it does change each year, I think. But people who are in financial hardship can apply to have their court costs waived. That's my understanding. So lots of people are saying, yeah, so I think we've answered all those questions, but we had a few questions before the webinar, which I spoke to one of my colleagues about. So one of the questions is, what's the test threshold for applications to be upheld? And that's something that Vicky and Mel go through when people submit their application. And it depends on the type of offence, as we spoke about before, as to whether people will be eligible or not eligible or never eligible. So we've spoken about that. And we've also mentioned the types of issues that the magistrate needs to take into account before they can issue an order. What are the options for people who have already received a second chance? Well, that depends on the circumstances. So if they've put in an application and they've been deemed eligible, then of course they go to court. If they've already had a disqualification lifted but then have new offences and get a new disqualification, there is a limit that a person cannot make a second application within 12 months of their first. That's right, isn't it, Vicky?
That's correct.
And then, but of course, if they do apply again, the fact that they've got new offences that led to another disqualification will be taken into account by the magistrate. Another question is, can disqualified driver get an exemption to drive to and from work only? The answer to that is no, short and sweet on that one. And the client my clients completed a drug court program and the judge waived some of their driving offences but not others. That may relate to the types of traffic offences, but in terms of this driver disqualification reforms, it's either all or nothing. They lift the whole disqualification. So if the only thing that they can't lift is a mandatory interlock order disqualification, so that can't be removed by these applications. So that will remain in place. So that could have been that circumstance, but people can always, after they've made an application and they've been deemed eligible and get that certified traffic record, they can book into a crime clinic at Legal Aid New South Wales and talk to one of the lawyers if that's they've had some other disqualifications or some of their traffic offences lifted and others not. They can take in their driving record to seek legal advice from a crime lawyer at Legal Aid New South Wales. So they were all the questions. People have asked about resources available in different languages, Liz. How do you help with that at LawAccess New South Wales?
Sure. So we can provide an interpreter on the phone with a customer if they call, and our website does have on the homepage at the top an option to search for a material available in a particular language, but not every single resource is available in all languages.
Okay, and I think some of the Legal Aid New South Wales resources are in language as well. We've got a whole range of publications around traffic offences. So have a look at the Legal Aid New South Wales website and the publications tab, and you can see which resources are there if you just put in driving as a search and see what's there, and some of those might be available in different languages as well. And again, if people are talking to a Legal Aid New South Wales lawyer, they can request an interpreter. So I think that's all of our questions that we've had from our participants today. So thank you everyone for participating in this webinar. And I'd like to thank our speakers, Mel and Vicky from Transport for New South Wales and Liz from LawAccess New South Wales. We really appreciate your time today and sharing your knowledge with us. And just a reminder to everyone on the on the webinar that you'll get a survey after the close of the webinar about the, we appreciate your feedback, and an email with links to the resources that we've talked about today, so you can follow those up. And on the slide that's up now, you'll see the email address for the Community Legal Education Team at Legal Aid New South Wales, cle@legalaid.newsouthwales.gov.au. You can send any questions there and we'll get them answered. And you can also see the LawAccess New South Wales phone number 1300 888 529 if you want to refer a client to get free legal help. Okay, so yeah, so I think that's all that we have for now. So I'll say goodbye to you all and close the webinar. Thanks again for your time, everyone, today.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.